My name is Andreas Dieckow, Principal Product Manager, InterSystems. My focus, one of the focus areas is product security for all our products. And we have a co-presenter.
Yeah, I'm Sean Klingensmith. I work in the development department. We're working primarily on security things. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm very excited that Sean is participating in this because at the end of the session, we're going to have a demo, and he will hold this demo, which is showcasing one of the parts of his work as far as it goes. This is a full agenda. We tried to try this out prior to we came here. We wanted to have 10 minutes of talk at the end. We currently have minus 10 minutes, so we need to hurry a little bit through the session. But if you have questions in between, raise your hand. I'll try to answer them as fast as I can. So agenda, I'm going to talk about OpenSSL with Iris, third-party components, general, and what is going to be the future of web service from InterSystems. We'll talk about changes in the installation of the product, security database, which is something that we're coming out new on. A lot of customers are waiting for something like this. I think you will be excited. And then I think the one I'm really excited about is the last one. It's no default users, and we'll explain in detail what this is. We're hoping to get some updates on what we're doing. But we also want you to be a voice in this. So there's a lot of things here that are just planned. So if you hear something and you have a different opinion about it or your objections, please reach out. That's your chance of getting your voice heard. And of course, you can get access to the latest and greatest. So let's start with OpenSSL with Cache and Ensemble. We haven't had an update in a long time, so I'm just going back to this. Cache and Ensemble are supporting 102 of OpenSSL. Some of you might know that OpenSSL is no longer officially supported by OpenSSL.org. So we bought a premium support agreement so that we can still provide newer version of OpenSSL 102 to Cache and Ensemble customers. So you don't have to worry about this, that you're running on a non-supported version as far as InterSystems products are concerned. Of course, the tendency should be to move to OpenSSL 1.1.1, TLS 1.3. 3.0 of OpenSSL is coming soon, so things are moving. In general, OpenSSL becomes have a dictator role in things of moving upgrades, right? Because they're phasing it out, it's no longer available everywhere. So a lot of motivation to upgrade to a newer version if there are security concerns. There are seats in the front here. There's no reason why you have to sit on the floor or stand in the back. Please, 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 be comfortable. This is a 4-hour talk. OpenSSL 1.1, sorry about this, I couldn't resist. OpenSSL 1.1.1, so we introduced that version in 2021.2 with Iris. 1.1.1 will not ever go to Cache and Ensemble. And 1.1.1 is different here because we no longer include this with the kits we're shipping. So prior to this, every kit we shipped an OpenSSL library with it that we used, which also meant that if the OpenSSL org updated this to a newer version, you needed new kits from us. So now we're linking to the major version of OpenSSL, which means if a 1.1.1 gets an update from OpenSSL.org, you do not need a kit from us anymore. You're just installing a new library that is part of that major version, and you're whole. You have the right library and you're available. So you don't need a new kit. That means you don't need to install anything, download, test, right? It's all the same. Will make life much easier. So it's now linked to the OS-provided major version of the operating system. No longer required. The current versions as of this morning, OpenSSL this morning just released new versions, are this, ZF for 102, 1.1.1p. For the first two, 102 and 1.1.1 are the major versions. So ZF indicates a minor version, P indicates a minor version. OpenSSL.org with 3.0 finally changed this into a consistent model. So 3.0 is the major version, 4.0 is the 4 at the end is the minor version for it. So third Any questions on this, on OpenSSL libraries in general? Pretty straightforward. Okay. Third-party libraries. So OpenSSL is in a way the first time we already did a third-party library, right? So we used to ship it in the past. It's really a third-party library. We shouldn't ship this with the product. So we're trying to get more of these third-party libraries out of our products. So we no longer want to ship all these libraries. We want to get into a state where all the libraries that are needed are coming from the operating system and can be updated for security reasons at a pace that doesn't require InterSystems to ship you new software and make adjustments. That makes, in the long run, things easier. There is complexity to it here, which is why we haven't done this yet. Typically, you'll find, for example, Python has a range of versions that we could work with, so we need to figure out how to deal with all these kind of things in the system. To make this easier, we have introduced with 2021.2 in the OpenSSL library a requirement checker, so the instance knows what kind of versions it would look for. So if you're having a 102, for example, and would try to install an Iris version 111 that uses 111 on it, it will say there is no 111 here. I cannot install the product. So it checks for libraries that the instance expects. And if it doesn't find the right major version of it or the range, whatever this will be in the future, the instance will not install. Will also not start up the instance. So it checks on installation, instance startup, and you can at any time get a manual report by invoking it and will say, I'm expecting these kind of things, I'm finding these, or everything is fine, or there are discrepancies.
Does that include updates for your updating Iris, not just a new install?
Yes. So specifically, when there are new libraries coming out that we could still support, the current thinking is that an Iris instance can reach out to a server from our side and get a new updated version of requirements for that instance. So that updates dynamically based on this. So you don't really need to have any kind of kit from us to really make this work.
If I'm updating one build of Iris 2021 and to the newer version of 2021, and I don't have the right third-party library, it will let me know during that check. It will do a requirement checker during the upgrade process as well.
It will do an upgrade check at the instance startup of the instance. So
then it's too late.
But I'm sorry, that's an installation. Yes, that's part of the installation process. It will check on upgrade. Yes.
I'm not doing this. I'll do it up.
Yeah, an upgrade. That will check too.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
And right now that's going to be limited to major version, not minor version.
Right now, it only is limited to OpenSSL 111, and there it's only the major version. So that in the future there will be more that we will do. Web server is another third-party component that we're shipping and that we like to get rid of. The web server, we typically only provided this. We only provided this for convenience purposes, and we want to discontinue this. We have all seen this a few months ago when Apache had all these challenges and people were waiting from InterSystems to do certain kind of things, and then there were other things going wrong, like everything went wrong, right? And it took a long time to get this all fixed out. So we also really need to get out of this one here. This one is however, a little bit more painful, right? Because once you start thinking about this, whoever used this as a web server, which I hope nobody would, but it happens, that the convenience factor of this is pretty high. But we will find ways of solving this and getting ready for this. So if you have no web server, what is the impact? Well, you have no immediate access to the system management portal anymore. The instance will of course run, but any kind of web connection is turned off. There's still seats sprinkled in. I'm pretty sure people will let you come in without biting you. I hope.
Does that mean that check is not being made on installation, upgrade, or?
The kit will no longer come with a web server kit. It will not install one. There will not be shipping one.
Does it notify us?
No.
So how does the system, if you're not
If you're not shipping web server, how would the system know you use HTTPS then?
Well, you would, let me get to this. So I will get to your question. Let me just go into a little sequence here. So there are situations where we're going to ship a web server, like evaluation kits, where it's like too complex for somebody to set this all up. So we'll try to make that experience easier. Maybe the community edition will get it too. And we're going to increase product documentation and have additional configuration tasks. So the biggest challenge with installing a web server by your own is not so much installing the web server, is how do I make the web server aware of all the forwarding addresses into the instance? So we're trying to make this something where we can provide you something that you can then link in, which is what the Apache mechanism does today already. We try to look a little bit into the code that does this, but that's a huge amount of code complexity that is unnecessary. So we're trying to, definitely we'll try to make that task easier. And then we will also release this as is, and then customers can you can make adjustments to it as needed, right? So that's this gateway integration here that we have. Today we have a standalone installer that does this already. Most other people don't even know this, that the gateway does that this component does this, because we install always a web server, so that never runs. But the standalone installer will already try to do this. We'll try to find a web server, and if the web server isn't configured to forwarding addresses, it will add this to it, based on an option, right? But it's already available. So we're planning to support Nginx, Apache, and Microsoft IIS with this kind of information. And that's it.
It won't impact existing installations.
No, it will not touch existing. So we're not pulling the carpet under you. But if you're running an InterSystems provided web server, you're at risk anyway, right? Because we're not updating this. You can't do SSL with it, right? All the limitations that it has. I would like to change the way we install the product. Today we have 3 installation options: minimal, normal, and lockdown. Minimal is the one that I'm concerned about because it lets you configure an instance without having to log in. I want to get rid of this. This is no longer appropriate today. Too many customers are actually doing this, which is a high risk, right? It's a really, really high risk. I can find a lot of vulnerable environments by just doing a simple web search. So it's really careful about this. So planning to remove this as an option. That means everything has to be authenticated. And you go in, you can probably still change it in ways you wanted to, but that's not advice. Ultimately, the long-term goal is to go away from these installation options. These are actually just defaults that we use during the installations. These are not there's not a real state in the instance that says minimal, normal, or lockdown. But I would like to change this into something else, more in the area of like, this is a development environment versus a deployment environment. The deployment environments are the ones with high risk because you have typically your sensitive data in there where you want to have real protection in it. By doing this, we can also drive then better security for this. So if you have a database that is meant for high risk because it has data in it, we might not allow you to do certain kind of things that would reduce the security beyond a certain level. So for example, we might not be easy to let you do enable unknown user, for example. So, well, you all have to become web server installation experts. We too. This is not an easy task sometimes. Don't use Apache. There are others that are maybe easier to use, but that's up to you. I just want to raise this awareness about the third-party libraries that we're going to change this. This will take us some time. There's a lot of complications and these kind of things that we need to sort out. Just be ready for future environments, and I'm pleased. We are in the Tech Exchange, both Sean and I. Mark David will also be in the Tech Exchange. He's actually in the room. Mark, he's our security architect. And so just find us, right? We really would like to get your input on things in more detail. Security database. So something new, not something we're using and not doing anymore. So why is that a problem? today we're using the %sys database on all products to store security configurations in the system, right? So the association between a user and a role, right, and resources, it's all defined in there, and it lives happily there, but it's not really protected because we can't encrypt the %sys database because it's the startup database of the instance. Also, because it's a %sys database, we can't mirror this information. A lot of customers are painfully aware of this, and if I look at the list of the number one requested item, it's actually I want %sys to be mirrored. And so we're slowly going there, and we're getting there. So this is going to be the first step. So in the case of the security database, we have to be a little bit more broad. So we're going to create a new database in the system. We currently call this the security database. And this database can be encrypted. It doesn't have to be, it's still your choice. We strongly recommend you do. If this is a sensitive information, if this is a development environment, you probably don't really care, right? But it's up to you to make that determination. It's also going to be API protected. So it will have only interactions through APIs, which is what we have today already as a mechanism that's available to use. But if you have database access, you can set globals, for example, right? Even for security settings, that will no longer work. So you have to only go through APIs, and that will get us all better auditing capabilities and insight into what is really going on with this kind of environment. And this database can be mirrored. And that's just a simple first implementation of what we're going to do, that it is mirrored. Everybody wants it. It's actually more complex, even for this, because it has security information in it that is sensitive. So you need to figure out what is the correct way of transporting this information through journal files, right, to the other instances, and how do I make sure that this is all there. So it's more than just taking the database and mirror it. So it's a little bit more work involved in this. But this is happening. Development is underway. It's done to a large extent so that we can already have some tests on it. Yes?
Can you talk on the differentiation between %sys and the security database? Because right now, I'm presuming they're both one blob of data in a database, or is security already split off into its own namespace?
Security is having its own global structure in %sys. Yeah. And if you upgrade to a version that has this new database, it will move this data all over. It's completely transparent to the application.
But it is true they are currently one location within a database.
Yes, there's other security databases that are not in the same structure, like OAuth, for example, has its own structure. That will actually change in this move. We'll also move this in the same global structure when we move to the security database.
And that's still in the planning stages, right?
Yes. Yes. Beg your pardon?
Delegated authentication, like the culture uses, for example.
Does he authenticate?
It doesn't have any impact on this. No, there's no impact on it. I mean, if you have written code that sets global security settings by directly manipulating with a global, right? So you set up error something like something, that will no longer work, right? So if you have code like this, you need to look out for this, and you probably find this fast the first time you want to start up, but that would be hopefully avoidable, right? But that's the only thing that should not work. Everything else should continue to work completely transparent.
You'll still have the old menu-driven, and then also
Yes.
API.
Yes. Yes.
Will this include like web applications and security settings and those
Can you start that again?
settings assigned to those resources?
They will all they will repoint to the right location. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're going to mirror a bunch of new things beyond this year, right? But these web settings are slightly different. They look like security, but they're not quite that. So there's a bunch of things that we need to mirror that people will ask about with high priority. Numbered second after this would actually be the task manager, mirroring the task, for example, right? That's a very high desire for this. So we'll see how we can deal with these kind of aspects.
Web applications also.
Beg your pardon?
Task manager is very important with
Yeah.
applications also.
Yes. Yeah.
I have one remark before. If you want to do two-factor authentication, then a part of the process is to generate a QR code. And the QR code is need like the Java to be installed. And this is something that you also need to check to see how you cope with it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is a lot of additional little things into this that we need to figure out. For example, when every time a user logs in, we're updating a database entry and taking note when the last login that happens today in the %sys database. But if you want to do this on a mirrored database, so simply on the login, you suddenly have an event that gets mirrored, right? And so we need to figure out how to deal with these kind of things to not create noise and make sure we deal with it.
You have to distinguish between a sync and async mirror. Because I would like to see a sys being, or security database being mirrored on a sync, but not on an async, for example.
Yes, there actually will be a lot more options about this. We were thinking about what we discussed, let's put it this way. We discussed, for example, taking a database and make this a read-only for security settings as far as the interaction is concerned, and make this as a central database that can be connected by multiple databases too. It's just a lot of thoughts in this area still. Move on. Security settings, yeah, I mentioned this already. We have, actually, let me elaborate on this. So one of the things that we have in the product, if you're Cache and Ensemble, you're more probably or Ensemble users, not Cache users, you have for the integration capabilities, there's a need to connect with another system in an electronic way through algorithms, right? So the typical Ensemble, you have an instance from InterSystems Iris, you want to connect to a different database, it needs authentication. That authentication needs to be provided from somewhere that is stored in the database. Of course, it has to be clear text in there, which is a security concern, right? And so we need to fix this. So one of the things that we're going to do with the security database will get wallet mechanisms, right? So where you can store credentials in there, and you don't interact with the clear text credentials, you interact through an ID with them. We can say, use this ID that represents this credential. I give you this URL, and I'll take this, go there, and authenticate. And then come back, either tell me it's worked or it doesn't work. But the process that the user initiated for this is never exposed to the clear text credentials. It's all done behind the scene in a separate process and moving this forward. And that can be now used for all kinds of things. If you have like your own encryption keys that you want to use and store this locally, you now have a security container that gets you this, and you can work directly or indirectly with it. So that's the wallet mechanism stored in a security database. Again, it's API protected. The API protection on this one, we're linking actually to the kernel to get stronger in this, so it's harder to bypass this. And this is the example I just gave. Connect to this URL using this this ID, and never exposed. No default users. Well, this is a project we're working on for quite some time. No default users of the system are users like admin, super user, right? We're all aware of this. And they're documented, right? People want to know what are default users, just look up the documentation. They're also often used by multiple people. So if you have an admin on your system, you typically don't have just one, you have several. If they want to use the system, all 4 or 5 of them using the admin account to log in to do what the admin wants to do on the system, right? And there are problems with this. No accountability. I don't know who of the 5 has made a change, right? An admin user just deleted the security database, right? That is bad, but now you will know who that is with this change. And from the security point of view, if you have an attacker going into the system, then half of the credentials are already known, right? So you don't have to guess the username. You just take one of them here and just run a password check on it, and then based on how well you define your passwords, you are either less or more vulnerable to these kind of attacks. I mean, in the long run, these kind of things here will change into something different in the future. Apple is starting to bring this out with iOS 16 if you start looking into this, so it's becoming really interesting on what they're doing in this area. But it's definitely weaker security. So what do we want to provide here? Well, we want to remove default user accounts. So you will only have user accounts on the system, right? So there is no admin, there's no super user, there's none of this. So a regular user account is the only thing that is needed. And a user account may be allowed to switch into more privileged accounts. So a user can log in, logs in as a normal user and can say if the user is allowed to do so, I'm logging in now as an admin. Requires additional set of credentials, right? And then switches the operation frame it has and is now become part of the admin role. So there are the user accounts that we have now switch into roles, right? They become roles in the system.
So how does the program run if you remove the default user? So we have EMS ADM as a default user. If you remove that, how's the application going to run in the background?
Well, these are InterSystems provided default users, right? If you
It's actually inside the database.
Okay.
yeah, so your example would continue to work.
So we would still be able to, if it's set up, we could log in. If we are root on a Linux system, we could go -v and get in that way. Or we could also do OS user. So cache or Iris is running as user on the OS. So if we log in as that user, then we can get in that.
If you create this on yourself, that will continue to work, yes. These are just getting really rid of the default users and so there's nothing documented as part of the product offering, right? So a user can be accessed to configure to have these roles. It will require a login to do so. So Sean is going to give a demo on this. So I just want to give you just a visual walkthrough on how this looks like in a little bit more in sequence in PowerPoint, but it will probably be better to connect them with the presentation. So let's assume I have my login name is Andreas D, which it isn't. But in case you thought that's not a default username that exists from that. Yes, I am 100% sure about this. I can tell you, they take security really seriously. All right, so I am logging in with this very strange username and as log in with my default role. So whatever I had, what we all are familiar with, right? I'm logging into my credentials, I'm getting these kind of roles, and I can do whatever I want to do with these roles or can do with these roles. In this case, the configuration allows me to also have access to admin roles and operator roles. So I can change this into something else. Let's say I want to do so. I can now say I'm going to log in as an admin role, and that switches context. So I'm now sitting in this yellow bubble, have all these admin roles, and Sean will show you how this looks like from the technical point of view. But I can do all my admin stuff now. Now, if I then realize I want to do something in the operator role, I can do this. I can also just go back here to the default roles. But if I go back to if I want to go on the other side and go to the operator role, I'm switching context again. By switching in, I now have a different path. The important part is to remember that the top part is still there. I'm not in there. I'm not operating this, but we're not losing this one. We're just switching into a new pane or layer, and there I can switch between these more powerful roles. And if I then decide I'm leaving this role, I should go forward, not backward. Then I'm just going back to my default role and continue to work there. And whatever I have in the default role, variables that I've set, they're all there still. I'm still back into the same context that I had previously on this environment.
Like doing sudo kind of thing?
It is very similar to sudo. Yes, absolutely.
Jump in to do what you need to do.
Yeah. I mean, this is not rocket science that we put in here, right? So sudo does this in years, and it's very, very successful in it. and it's going to help everybody to do that. So yes. So let's go to a demo, and Sean, take it away.
Yeah, so do you have a question in the back?
Yeah, Andreas, I wanted to ask one additional question. So there's things like Iris Temp where periodically an application will use an application, system application implementation like what you're doing here. What are you doing to take care to make sure that those namespaces, databases don't have a bad actor access them? Are there things that you're doing to make sure that you're not putting data into clear space and somebody could, scrape it off of that? So, Iris Temp, I'll give you an example. What are any places there being used to scratch that space? And if they are, what's your recommendation?
Yeah. So cache temp, it's a separate discussion, right? But cache temp continues to be interesting because with all the efforts that we're doing, you want to have the sorted SQL and it's too big to hold this in memory. It will be in cache temp, and I can see certainly data that I shouldn't be able to see. So this is something that we'll have to address. We haven't addressed it yet. And
In the meantime, you recommend encrypting the database so that it's...
You can encrypt this database, yes. And that's not a problem. That at least helps from one access viewpoint, right, to have being protected about this. And I think everybody does this already, but we also need the protection on the other end from inside.
Well, it's on your mind.
Yeah, it is definitely. Yeah. All right, Sean, sorry.
Okay, yeah, so, Andreas described this in abstract. Let's take a look how this works in practice. So, so now you can see, so this is just the management portal. I have my user definition for not Andreas D, for some other person named Sean. And you can look here, you can see what the default roles are. So this is what you get when you log in. It's what we have right now. What I've added is this new tab over here where you can define the set of roles that you're allowed to escalate to later on once you've already logged in. So again, you can see this user can escalate to either manager or operator. So throughout the course of your forgot to reset everything. So here we're at our terminal prompt. So I can just log in to Iris like usual. I can log in as Sean with my very complex password. Now you can see, I'm logged in as Sean. I have those default roles we showed. So at this point, I have permissions on the user database. I can go run my application, do user things. I can set variables or globals. I can run my application. Then suppose throughout the course of things, I need to do something that requires elevated privileges. Say, look at the lock table. So I can go to the sys namespace. Oops, that's not how you spell sys. But I can't get there, right? Because I don't have permissions to. So what we've added is this new command. You can run ZSU. It asks me which role I want to log into. So operator will let me run the lock table. So it asks me to log in again. So this is my same super complex password. And now you can see I'm at a new prompt. So the prompt looks different. It shows you which role I've escalated to, and gives some indication this is an escalated prompt. It's not a normal prompt. So now that I'm here, I have that. You can see I'm still logged in as Sean, but I have a different set of roles. And again, you see present operator, it replaced my roles. This is a new security context. It doesn't add to the roles that I had, it just replaces them.
What happens if you do ZW right now? You still have that memory from your other session or not?
You do not. So this is a new scope, so I don't have the variables I had before. Yep. So, but now I have the escalated privileges. I can go into present sys. I can, do
Harm.
set variables, do privilege things, and importantly, I can now run lock tab to go look at my locks and do whatever it is I needed to do. Then going on, like we said, I'm at this escalated prompt. If I need, say, okay, I'm operator, but now I want to do some other admin stuff, say, do caret security, for instance. I can escalate again, choose manager instead, again, log in. Now I can do caret security, if I can spell it, and edit users or whatever it is I need to do. Yeah, so make sure I hit everything. And then at this point, right, so I'm at the escalated prompt, I can type quit, and you'll see this goes back to my initial prompt. It doesn't go back to operator. That context has been replaced. It goes back to my initial login prompt. You can see username, roles, if I can spell. Username roles, I'm back where I started. Developer user, my login roles, and you look, see, right, I have my initial variables that I had before. I'm back at the original context. Yeah, so.
Would there be any thought of adding to where you can pass in the whole stack when you elevate your permissions?
So you want to stack the context instead of, so I quit from admin, go back to operator? We could do that. It seemed, yeah,
You
we
would
talked
have
about
to
this
log
though.
in. It's a login step, right?
Yeah.
So you would have to log in either way, so why not log in to the previous one? We don't want to preserve context for previous ones. We really want to destroy that one to avoid any kind of side effects that you suddenly can access another process with higher permissions and like inject code, for example, and do something that you shouldn't be able to do.
No,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I just
Yeah, so
exploring.
we decided it'd be simpler and easier and probably more secure to replace the context instead of having a stack of elevated contexts. I'm sorry? All this is audit is logged in the audit log. So this is a quick demo for time, but there'll be a somewhat more extended demo and have more time for discussion in the Tech Exchange later today and tomorrow.
Are there equivalents to that at the management portal?
Yes.
Studio,
Yes.
Visual Studio,
In the management portal, I've implemented that. I haven't,
all the same.
haven't done Studio or Visual. VS Code is going to be a little more complicated again because it's a REST service, et cetera. But yeah, so they're right. So but those
Well,
are
the
things definitely
management
need to be
portal
worked
goes
through.
away, right? So
If you don't install Apache, it's not there.
What's the expected culmination of all of this?
So for this project in particular, we're hoping to get your feedback for the summit. It's one of the goals we have. So you definitely come talk to us. We're planning to do an early access program for this. It's not quite ready right now, but hopefully soon.
September?
Yeah,
I'm not
definitely.
gonna hold you to it.
We should. We're aiming to have it ready by then. Yeah.
2, 3, 4.
Shooting for 2022.2.
No, not for this. Yeah.
Thank you.
So yeah.
All right.
So with this and several things you've already been talking about, you're adding to the list of kind of things you need to think about before you begin your installation. You have to decide what accounts you're gonna have instead of the default ones. Some of those security things, and you have to get the web server set up. So we're adding some decisions you need to make. Do we have in the documentation some kind of a checklist or something like that so that it's easy to sit down with the customer, be ready to do that install and have all those things you need, because that list is growing now.
yeah, no, well, there will be a roadmap for all of this so that you can see what's coming. And we're trying to introduce things carefully, right? So if we do this feature here, it will initially coming as an option. You can choose to use that. No default users, you can still use the other one. But then maybe a year after, which we'll announce what the time window is, one version will then default to it. And that will be it, right? I think this is going to be something that will be mandatory in the future. We already know from some auditors that where they see default user accounts on environments that they're working on this. So we'll already get some feedback on that one as well. So as Sean has seen all the slides, he already gave all the rest of the presentation. So let me just show the slide to you as well. Thank you, Sean. So we're in the Tech Exchange. We're going to provide an early access program for this, a really early access program. So I shouldn't say early access program, like an alpha version. So if you want to have it and see it out, reach out to me. I can add you to the list. I can only do 10 of those because I will handheld them myself. I cannot scale that much as an organization, but I would like to get first line feedback. Right? I really would like to work with you. And that also means I really want to work with you. So don't just, I'm expecting you to work with me. So spend time on this, right? Investment, unfortunately. But then we'll get to a better product, right? It will help us or help you to get what you need, right? And making sure that what we're delivering is satisfying those kind of needs. So find us on the Tech Exchange. Sean already mentioned this. If you look at the schedule, there is tomorrow and on Thursday. We do a demo in the Tech Exchange, so not the full presentation of 4 hours. It's mostly designed around your feedback, right? So if you want to look at this again, right, we can look at certain kind of things in this session. We want to talk to you about this. If you have concerns or ideas, right? There were already some good ideas from the back highlighted, and we would love to hear about this. Any other questions?
Cool avatar.
I hear that actually a lot. It becomes less cool if you understand how that works. I just took a picture of myself and then used software that says, show this face how it would look in medieval times. And that's what it's come out with. All righty, thank you so very much for attending the session. Thank you.